The Galactic Council chamber was older than most stars. It floated in the darkness of space, a massive station built around a dying sun. And inside its great hall, the rulers of 1,000 worlds gathered to discuss matters of war and peace. On this day, they gathered to discuss something far less important. They gathered to discuss Earth. High Chancellor Vexus sat upon his throne of black crystal, his 4 eyes watching the holographic display that floated in the center of the chamber. He was ancient, even by the standards of his long-lived species, and he had seen empires rise and fall like waves upon a shore. Nothing surprised him anymore. Nothing impressed him. And certainly nothing frightened him. The image before him showed a small blue planet, third from an unremarkable yellow star, spinning slowly in the void. On its surface, tiny creatures built tiny cities and fought tiny wars against each other. They had primitive flying machines and simple rockets that could barely reach their own moon. They split atoms to make weapons and then pointed those weapons at each other. They were, by any reasonable measure, utterly insignificant. Warlord Corrin of the Draylan Empire stepped forward. He was tall and broad, his gray skin marked with the scars of 100 battles, and his voice carried the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. "High Chancellor," he said, bowing just enough to show respect without showing weakness, "I present to you the planet called Earth by its inhabitants. It is rich in metals, water, and organic resources. Its population of 8 billion would make excellent workers for our mining colonies." A ripple of amusement passed through the gathered representatives. 8 billion primitives with nuclear toys. How quaint. "The Draylan Empire requests permission to harvest this world," Corrin continued. "We estimate full conquest within 3 standard rotations. Perhaps 4, if they prove stubborn." Vexus waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Does anyone object to this request?" Silence filled the chamber. Why would anyone object? The humans were nothing. A minor species on the edge of explored space, decades away from even discovering faster than light travel. They posed no threat. They had no allies. They had no value beyond their resources and their labor. "Then it is granted," Vexus said. "The Draylan Empire may proceed with, I object." Every eye in the chamber turned to Ambassador Thalas. She was small by the standards of her people, with silver skin and eyes that glowed soft blue. And she had spent the last 40 years studying species that the Council considered beneath notice. She had listened to human radio signals. She had watched their video transmissions. She had learned their languages, studied their history, and come to a conclusion that no one in this chamber wanted to hear. "On what grounds?" Vexus asked, more annoyed than curious. Thalas stepped forward, and another holographic display appeared beside the image of Earth. This one showed fire and death. Cities burning. Soldiers charging into certain doom, bombs falling from the sky like rain. "These are recordings from human history," she said. "What you see is called World War II. It happened 80 of their years ago. Over 60 million of them died. They burned entire cities with fire that fell from the sky. They created weapons that split the very atoms of matter and used them against their own kind." Corrin laughed. "You prove my point, Ambassador. They are savages who kill each other. They will be easy to conquer." "You misunderstand," Thalas said, and her voice was calm but firm. "They did this to themselves. They survived this. And then, within 20 years, they went to their moon. They took the same rockets that carried their atomic weapons and used them to touch the stars. This is not a species that surrenders. This is not a species that breaks." She pointed to another image. A massive asteroid striking a planet. Fire sweeping across continents. 65 million years ago, an asteroid struck Earth and killed almost every living thing on its surface. The humans call it the extinction of the dinosaurs. But life survived. It adapted, it evolved, and eventually, it produced them. She turned to face the Council directly. "They climb from extinction events like other species climb from bed in the morning. They are not prey. Warlord Corrin, they are something else entirely." For a moment, Silence held the chamber. Then Corin laughed again, and others joined him. "You have spent too long listening to their stories, Ambassador," Corin said. "They are primitives. They have no shields. They have no plasma weapons. They cannot even leave their own solar system. My fleet will crush them like insects. And I will bring you their leaders in chains." Thalos looked at him with something close to pity. "I hope you are right, Warlord. I truly do." Vexus ended the discussion with a gesture. "The objection is noted and overruled. The Dryalan Empire has permission to harvest Earth. This session is concluded." As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Observer Luma approached High Chancellor Vexus. She was young for her position, but her memory was perfect, and her task was to record history as it happened. "High Chancellor," she said, "I request permission to accompany the Dryalan fleet. This conquest should be documented for the galactic record." Vexus regarded her with mild interest. "You wish to watch primitives die?" "I wish to record the expansion of Council-aligned territory," Luma said carefully. "It is my duty." "Very well. The conquest should take less than a week. You will have your documentation." 3 days later, Warlord Corin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endless Victory, and watched as 3,000 warships powered their hyperspace drives. It was the largest fleet he had ever commanded, and it was more than enough to crush 100 Earths. He had conquered 17 worlds in his career. This would be his 18th. "How long until we arrive?" he asked Admiral Nori, his second in command. 6 standard hours, she replied. "The humans will have no warning. Their detection technology is primitive at best." Corin smiled. He was already thinking about how he would present Earth's resources to the Council. Perhaps he would keep some of the humans as personal servants. They were small and weak, but they might prove amusing. Far behind them, Ambassador Thalos stood at the window of her quarters and watched the fleet vanish into hyperspace. She had done what she could. She had warned them, and they had laughed at her. She thought about the human transmissions she had studied. Their music, their stories, their strange and terrible history. She thought about a species that had invented nuclear weapons, and then, somehow, chosen not to destroy itself with them. She thought about creatures that looked at the stars and said, "We will go there," even though they had no way to do it. And she thought about what would happen when the Dryalan arrived at Earth and demanded surrender. "They will not surrender," she whispered to the empty room. "They never surrender." On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Korea, Admiral Taeho Park ran another simulation on his computer. It was the same simulation he had run 1,000 times before, the scenario that his superiors called a fantasy drill and his colleagues called a waste of time. What would humanity do if aliens attacked? He had prepared plans. He had built weapons. He had argued for years that the universe was too large for Earth to be alone, and that if other life existed, it might not be friendly. Everyone had called him paranoid. Everyone had laughed. But Taeho Park was not a man who gave up. He was not a man who stopped preparing just because others thought he was foolish. And somewhere in his heart, he knew that one day, the simulation would become reality. He just did not know that day was coming in 6 hours. The sky above Earth changed in an instant. One moment, there was only darkness and stars. The next moment, 3,000 alien warships appeared out of nothing, their massive forms blocking the light of the sun. They stretched across the horizon like a wall of metal and death, and every satellite, every telescope, every camera on the planet captured the same impossible image. Humanity was not alone. And whatever had come to visit them had not come in peace. In bunkers and command centers around the world, alarms screamed, phones rang, generals woke from sleep. Presidents and prime ministers gathered their advisors and asked the same question. What do we do? Admiral Taeho Park was already awake. He had never really stopped working, never stopped preparing for this moment. When his phone rang, he answered it before the first ring finished. I know, he said. I see them. Get me connected to every military command on the planet. Now, within 1 hour, something happened that had never happened before in human history. Every nation on Earth, every enemy and every ally, joined a single communication network. Old hatreds were put aside. Old wars were forgotten. Because whatever was floating above their heads, it was not interested in which country owned which piece of land. It was interested in all of them. Warlord Corin watched the planet below with satisfaction. His sensors showed military bases powering up, aircraft taking flight, ships moving into defensive positions. How cute. How utterly pointless. Open a channel, he ordered. All frequencies. I want every creature on that planet to hear this. His communications officer obeyed, and Corin's voice boomed across Earth in every human language, translated perfectly from intercepted transmissions. People of Earth, I am Warlord Corin of the Draelan Empire. Your planet has been claimed by the Galactic Council as a resource zone. You have 1 rotation of your world to surrender. Lay down your weapons. Present your leaders for processing. Comply. And some of you will live. Resist. And you will be erased from existence. This is your only warning. The message ended. Corin smiled and turned to Admiral Nori. Now we wait. They will argue among themselves for a few hours, then they will surrender. They always do. Observer Luma recorded everything from her position at the back of the bridge. She noted Corin's confidence. She noted the size of the fleet. She noted the primitive technology of the human defense systems. Everything pointed to a quick and easy victory. But she also remembered Ambassador Thalas's words. They never surrender. On Earth, the leaders of every nation gathered in a virtual meeting room. Faces filled screens. Voices spoke over each other. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to pray. Admiral Tejo Park waited for silence, then spoke. There is nothing to discuss. They want our resources and our people as slaves. Surrender means death for billions and slavery for the rest. We have only one choice. We cannot win, someone said. Look at those ships. We have nothing that can touch them. We have nuclear weapons, Tejo replied. We have been afraid of them for 80 years. Now we will see if the universe should be afraid of them too. A vote was held. It was not close. Humanity chose to fight. Tejo composed the response himself. It was broadcast on every frequency the aliens were using, and it contained only 4 words. Come and take it. Corin received the message. For a moment, he simply stared at the screen, unable to process what he was hearing. Then he laughed. Brave words from dead creatures. Target their largest city. Show them what happens to those who defy the Draelan Empire. The target was Seoul. It was where Admiral Park had his command center. It was one of the largest cities on Earth, and it was home to 25 million people. As the Draelan warships descended through the atmosphere, Captain Yuna Kim scrambled her squadron. Shadow Wing was the best fighter unit in the Korean Air Force, and Yuna was the best pilot Shadow Wing had ever produced. She had never lost a fight in her life. She did not intend to start now. All wings. Form up, she called into her radio. We have incoming hostiles. Lots of them. Stay tight. Follow my lead. And make every shot count. Captain, our missiles cannot penetrate their shields, her wingman said. What are we supposed to do? Yuna smiled, though no one could see it behind her helmet. We make them chase us. We buy time for the real weapons to get into position. The first wave of human missiles rose to meet the Draelan attack ships. They were old missiles, conventional explosives, the kind humanity used to fight each other. They splashed harmlessly against alien shields, exploding in bright flowers of fire that did no damage. Corin watched from his flagship and nodded in satisfaction. Their weapons are useless. Continue the attack. But the missiles had served their purpose. They had shown the Draelan where Earth's defenses were weak. They had made the aliens confident, and they had given the real weapons time to launch. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, a submarine received its orders. Captain Minho Baek read the codes 3 times to make sure they were correct. Then he turned to his crew and said, "Launch nuclear missiles. All of them. Target the enemy ships above Seoul." The missiles rose from the water like arrows fired at gods. On the Draylen attack ships, sensors detected the new projectiles. An officer reported to his commander, "More missiles incoming. Same as before. They will not penetrate our shields." The commander did not bother to look. "Ignore them. Focus on the target city." The nuclear missiles struck, and everything changed. The explosions were not like anything the Draylen had ever seen. They were not fire. They were not plasma. They were pure atomic fury. The same power that burned in the heart of stars, compressed into weapons small enough to carry on rockets. The energy released was beyond anything the Draylen shields were designed to handle. 12 warships vanished in an instant. Not destroyed, vanished. Turned to atoms and scattered across the sky. On the bridge of the endless victory, Corin stared at his display in disbelief. What was that?" "Unknown weapon," Admiral Nori replied, her voice shaking. "Our shields. They were not designed for this type of energy. The radiation, the heat, the electromagnetic pulse. How is that possible? They are primitives." Observer Luma watched in silence, her recording device capturing every moment. She thought of Ambassador Thalas. She thought of the warning that everyone had ignored. They split atoms. They weaponized the fabric of matter itself. In Seoul, the people cheered. They had seen the explosions in the sky. They had seen the enemy ships die. For the first time since the invasion began, they had hope, but Corin was not finished. He was furious, humiliated, but he was not defeated. He ordered more ships forward, this time with shields at maximum power. He ordered his weapons to target the missile launchers, the submarines, the bases where the nuclear weapons were stored. The battle raged for hours. Earth lost cities. Millions died in fire and destruction. But for every human death, the Draylen paid a price. 50 ships fell in the first day. Then 60. Then 100. The nuclear weapons kept coming, launched from places the Draylen could not find. Delivered by soldiers who knew they would not survive. Captain Yuna Kim flew mission after mission, her squadron shrinking with each engagement. She watched her friends die. She watched her country burn, but she kept flying, kept fighting, kept refusing to give up. In the Galactic Council chamber, High Chancellor Vexus watched the live feed from Observer Luma's recording device. His 4 eyes were wide. His ancient body trembled. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Why is this taking so long?" Ambassador Thalas stood beside him, silent until now. "They invented those weapons 80 years ago," she said quietly. "They pointed them at each other. They lived with the threat of their own destruction every single day. And they survived." She turned to face Vexus directly. "How? Did you really think they would surrender to you?" On the bridge of the endless victory, Admiral Nori approached Warlord Corin with a status report. Her face was pale. Her hands shook. "Warlord, we have lost 50 ships. The humans are. They are not breaking. They are smiling. We intercept their communications, and they are laughing and crying and fighting harder than before. I do not understand." "They should have surrendered by now." Corin said nothing. He stared at the planet below, at the tiny blue world that was supposed to be an easy conquest. And for the first time in his life, he felt something he had never felt before. He felt doubt, 3 weeks into the invasion, and Earth was still fighting. Warlord Corin had expected 3 days. He had planned for a week at most. But the humans refused to follow his expectations. They refused to break. They refused to surrender. And worst of all, they were getting better at killing his soldiers. In a bunker deep beneath the mountains, Operator Junho Choi stared at his computer screen with tired eyes. He had not slept in 4 days. He had barely eaten. But he had done something that should have been impossible. He had cracked the Draylen communication encryption. "Admiral Park," he called out. "I have it. I can hear everything they say. Teho Park rushed to his side and listened to the alien transmissions. Orders to attack. Reports of losses. Requests for supplies. And underneath it all, something that made Teho smile for the first time in weeks. Fear. They are afraid, he said. They do not understand why we keep fighting. They do not understand how we keep fighting. He put his hand on Junho's shoulder. You just gave us our greatest weapon, information. Now we know where they will attack before they attack. Now we know their weaknesses. The information spread quickly. Within hours, every military commander on Earth knew the Draylen battle plans. Ambushes were prepared. Traps were set, and when the alien ground forces landed, expecting easy conquest, they found something very different waiting for them. General Sujin Han had studied every war in human history. She knew tactics that the Draylen had never imagined. Strategies developed by generals who had fought for thousands of years against their own kind, and she was ready to teach the invaders a lesson. In the jungles of Vietnam, Draylen soldiers walked into minefields and tripwires. In the mountains of Afghanistan, they faced snipers who could kill from kilometers away and then vanish into caves. In the cities of Russia, they found buildings that looked abandoned but were actually filled with soldiers waiting to strike. The Draylen had never faced guerrilla warfare before. They were used to enemies who met them in open battle, who lined up in formations and fought by the rules. Humans did not fight by rules. Humans fought to win. They hide, one Draylen commander reported to Korin. They attack and then disappear. We cannot find them. We cannot catch them. And when we think we have won, they come back and attack again. Then burn the hiding places, Korin ordered. Burn everything until they have nowhere to hide. They tried. They destroyed forests and mountains and cities. But the humans simply moved. They dug deeper tunnels. They built new hiding places. They took the weapons from dead aliens and learned how to use them against their creators. Dr. Minho Baek worked without rest in his underground laboratory. He had been building weapons for years. Weapons that humanity had banned because they were too terrible to use. But the invasion had changed everything. The rules no longer applied. Project Omega is ready, he told Admiral Park during their daily meeting. Antimatter warheads, kinetic rods, biological countermeasures that will only affect alien physiology. We built these because we were afraid of ourselves. Now I understand why. Teho looked at the weapons on the screen. They were monsters. They were nightmares made real. But they were also humanity's best chance for survival. Use them, he said. Use everything we have. The first antimatter warhead detonated inside a Draylen carrier ship. The explosion was invisible at first. Just a flash of pure energy, and then the entire ship simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, erased. Turned into nothing by the collision of matter and antimatter. The kinetic rods fell from orbit like the fingers of an angry god. They were simple weapons, just long poles of heavy metal. But when dropped from space, they hit the ground at speeds that nothing could survive. No explosion, no radiation, just pure kinetic force that shattered alien landing zones and buried invaders under mountains of broken earth. Korin watched his losses mount and felt his confidence crumble. 1,000 ships destroyed, then 1,500. His mighty armada of 3,000 was shrinking by the day, and the humans showed no sign of stopping. This is impossible, he said to Admiral Nori. They should have been crushed in the first week. How are they still fighting? How are they building new weapons faster than we destroy them? Nori had no answer. She had studied the humans carefully since the invasion began, and she had come to a terrible conclusion. They were not a species that could be conquered. They were a species that adapted, evolved, and grew stronger under pressure. Every weapon the Draylen used against them, they learned from. Every attack made them more dangerous. In the Galactic Council chamber, High Chancellor Vexus received Korin's request for reinforcements. He read it 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. The mighty Draylen Empire, conquerors of 17 worlds, was asking for help against primitives who had not even reached the stars. "This is embarrassing," one council member said. "The Draylen cannot even handle one backward planet? We should send ships," another argued. "Not to help Corin, but to see for ourselves. I want to understand what these humans are." Ambassador Thalis spoke quietly from her seat. "If you send more ships, you will only give them more targets. End this invasion. Retreat. Leave Earth alone, and pray that they do not follow you home." Vexus laughed, but it was not a confident laugh. "Retreat? From primitives? The Council does not retreat. We will send 8,000 additional ships from 3 species. That will be more than enough to finish this." Thalis closed her eyes. "You are making a terrible mistake." The vote was held. The reinforcements were approved. 8,000 warships began their journey to Earth. On the Endless Victory, observer Luma recorded her daily report for the Galactic Record. Her hands trembled as she spoke. Day 23 of the Earth invasion. The Draylen have lost 1,800 ships. Ground forces report 80% casualties. The humans continue to resist with weapons we have never seen before. She paused, searching for words. "I was sent to document an extinction. Instead, I am documenting an awakening." The humans have a phrase in their languages. They call it a sleeping giant. They say it is dangerous to wake a sleeping giant. I did not understand what they meant until now. She looked out the viewport at the blue planet below, still burning but still fighting. And she understood something that Corin and Vexus and all the others did not want to understand. The humans were not dying. They were evolving. Every day they survived, they grew stronger. Every ship they captured, they studied. Every weapon used against them, they learned to copy. They were taking everything the galaxy threw at them and using it to become something new. General Sujin Han captured a Draylen officer during a raid on an enemy supply base. She brought him before the cameras and broadcast the interrogation across all alien frequencies. "Why do you keep coming?" she asked. "Why do you not retreat and leave us alone?" The alien looked at her with confused eyes. "Because we do not understand. You should have broken by now. Every species breaks. Every world we conquer. The defenders see our power, and they surrender. But you keep fighting. You keep dying. You keep laughing and crying and fighting harder. We do not understand." Sujin leaned forward, her face calm, but her eyes burning with something ancient and fierce. "Let me explain something to you. We have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We have invented 100 ways to destroy ourselves. We have stood at the edge of extinction and looked into the darkness and said, 'Not today.' We do not break. We bend. And then we snap back." She stood up and walked away, leaving the alien alone with his fear. That night, as the reinforcement fleet entered hyperspace, Corin stared at Earth and made a decision. He would not retreat. He would not surrender. He would conquer this planet, or die trying. He did not know it yet, but he had already made his choice. The reinforcement fleet arrived like a wave of steel and fire. 8,000 warships from 3 Galactic Council species joined what remained of Corin's forces, bringing the total to nearly 10,000 vessels. They filled the sky above Earth, blocking out the stars, a wall of metal that seemed impossible to defeat. Admiral Tejo Park looked at the sensor readings and felt his heart grow heavy. 10,000 ships. Earth had built 200 vessels in 3 months of desperate work, small fighters and converted cargo ships, armed with nuclear weapons. 200 against 10,000. "We cannot win this fight," one of his generals said. "The numbers are too great." Tejo shook his head. "We do not need to win. We need to make them bleed so badly that they never come back. We need to make them understand that Earth is not worth the cost." Captain Yuna Kim received her orders in the pilot-ready room. Her squadron, Shadow Wing, had been reduced from 30 pilots to 12. The others had died fighting. Now the 12 survivors were being asked to fly one more mission. A mission that none of them would return from. "The target is the enemy flagship," Tejo explained over the video link. "We have developed a new weapon. An electromagnetic pulse bomb that will disable any ship within 100 kilometers, but it must be delivered directly inside the flagship's shield perimeter. Once the shields are down, our kinetic weapons can finish the job. Yuna understood what he was not saying. Someone had to fly into the heart of the enemy fleet, break through their defenses, and detonate the bomb. It was a one-way trip. "I will lead the mission myself," she said. Her squadron protested. They argued. They volunteered to take her place. But Yuna was firm. "I am the best pilot we have. If anyone can get through, it is me. This is not a discussion. This is an order." That night, she called her mother. They talked about small things: the weather, the garden, the cat that still waited by the window for Yuna to come home. Neither of them mentioned the mission. Neither of them mentioned that this might be the last time they spoke. When the call ended, Yuna sat alone in the darkness and thought about everything she was fighting for. Her country, her people, her world, and she thought about all the pilots who had died before her. All the soldiers who had given their lives so that humanity could survive one more day. She would not let them down. The attack began at dawn. 200 human ships rose from Earth like a swarm of angry insects, flying straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. They were outgunned. They were outnumbered, but they were not afraid. The Draylen opened fire, and human ships began to die. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Radio channels filled with screams and final words and the silence of the dead, but still the humans came, weaving through the fire, dodging the plasma bolts, refusing to turn back. Captain Yuna Kim flew at the front of the formation, her fighter dancing through the chaos like a bird in a storm. She had never flown better. She had never felt more alive, and she knew, with perfect clarity, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. "Shadow Wing, follow my lead," she called. "We push through to the flagship. No matter what happens, we do not stop." One by one, her squadron fell. Jamin was the first, his ship torn apart by a direct hit. Then Minji, then Taewon, then Heijin. Yuna watched them die and kept flying. She could not stop. She could not mourn. She could only finish the mission. When she reached the flagship, only 3 ships remained. She ordered the other 2 to provide cover fire, then activated her afterburners and dove straight toward the massive vessel. "Enemy fighter approaching," a Draylen officer reported on the bridge. "It is too small to cause significant damage." Corin watched the tiny ship racing toward his flagship and felt a strange chill run down his spine. Something was wrong. The humans did not waste pilots on suicide runs unless they had a reason. "Destroy it," he ordered. Now, the flagship's guns opened fire, but Yuna was too fast, too skilled. She dodged and weaved, slipping through the gaps in the defensive fire, getting closer and closer to the shield perimeter. Her radio crackled with Admiral Park's voice. "Yuna, you are almost there. Just a little further. Tell my mother," she said, her voice calm and steady, "that I flew higher than she ever dreamed." She crossed the shield perimeter and activated the weapon. The electromagnetic pulse exploded outward in a wave of invisible energy. It was not fire. It was not light. It was pure electromagnetic force, and it tore through the flagship's systems like a hurricane through paper. Lights flickered and died. Engines shut down. Weapons went silent. And then the kinetic rods began to fall. Dr. Minho Baek had positioned them in orbit months ago, hidden among the debris of destroyed satellites. Simple weapons. Just long poles of tungsten, aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. Now they fell like the judgment of heaven, accelerating to speeds that no shield could stop. 400 ships died in the first wave. Their hulls shattered like glass. Their crews never knew what hit them, and in the chaos, the remaining human fleet pressed forward, firing everything they had at the disabled enemy vessels. Corin stood on the dark bridge of his crippled flagship and watched his empire crumble. The lights were gone. The weapons were gone. His mighty fleet was being torn apart by creatures he had dismissed as primitives. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" Admiral Nori grabbed his arm. "We must retreat. The fleet is breaking. We cannot hold." "No," Corin said. "I will not retreat. I will not surrender. I will die before I let these insects defeat me. He drew his weapon and marched toward the hangar bay, where his personal fighter waited. If his fleet would not win this battle, he would win it himself. But he never reached the hangar. Admiral Taeho Park had led a boarding party onto the flagship during the chaos, and he was waiting. The two commanders faced each other in the dark corridor. Korin, the warlord who had conquered 17 worlds. Taeho, the admiral who had spent his life preparing for this moment. They looked at each other, and they understood. You should have surrendered, Korin said. You should have stayed home, Taeho replied. They fought. It was brief and brutal. Korin was stronger, faster, more experienced. But Taeho had something Korin did not. He had nothing left to lose. When it was over, Korin lay on the floor, his gray skin turning pale, his life fading. He looked up at the human who had defeated him and spoke his final words. They were never prey. We walked into the den of predators. Taeho stood over the body of his enemy and felt no triumph. Only exhaustion. Only grief. Only the weight of all the deaths that had brought him to this moment. Admiral Nori assumed command of what remained of the invasion force. She opened a channel to the Galactic Council and spoke clearly and formally, her voice carrying across the stars. Request immediate withdrawal authorization. Earth is not conquerable. I repeat, Earth is not conquerable. We have lost 60% of our forces. Warlord Korin is dead. If we stay, we will all die. In the council chamber, High Chancellor Vexus heard the transmission and felt something he had not felt in 1,000 years. Fear. Observer Luma stood on the bridge of a surviving ship and watched the human fleet pursue the retreating aliens. They did not chase far. They stopped at the edge of their solar system and watched the invaders run. She recorded her observations for the galactic record, her voice barely a whisper. The humans have won. Against impossible odds, against the combined might of 4 species, they have won. Not through superior technology, not through greater numbers, but through something else. Something we do not have a word for. They call it spirit. They call it will. They call it the refusal to die. She paused, looking at the blue planet growing smaller in the distance. I do not know what happens next. But I know one thing. The galaxy will never be the same. The humans are awake now. And they are building ships. The remnants of the great invasion fleet limped home through the darkness of space. Nearly 2,000 ships from an original force of 11,000. The rest were debris floating in orbit around a small blue planet that should have been an easy conquest. Admiral Nori sat alone on the bridge of her damaged vessel and stared at the stars. She had served under Warlord Korin for 20 years. She had watched him conquer world after world. She had believed he was invincible. Now he was dead, killed by creatures that the Galactic Council had dismissed as primitive animals. We underestimated them, she said to the empty air. We saw their small ships and their simple weapons, and we thought they would be easy. We did not see what they really were. Her communications officer approached quietly. Admiral, the Galactic Council is demanding a full report. They want to know what happened. Nori laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tell them we woke something up. Tell them we attacked a world that should have been left alone. Tell them that if they are wise, they will never go near that planet again. On Earth, the survivors counted their dead. 2 billion people had died in 6 months of war. Cities were gone. Countries were scarred. The sky was still dark with smoke and ash from the battles that had raged across every continent. But humanity had won. Admiral Taeho Park stood at the window of his command center and watched the sunrise. It was the first sunrise he had truly seen since the invasion began. For months, he had lived underground, surrounded by screens and reports and the endless weight of command. Now, finally, he could stand in the light and breathe. Dr. Minho Baek joined him, carrying a tablet filled with technical data. We have recovered 17 alien ships intact, he said. Their faster-than-light drives are more advanced than anything we imagined. I believe we can reverse engineer them within 2 years. Maybe less. Taeho nodded slowly. 2 years. Then we go out there. We find them. and we make sure they never attack us again. General Sujin Han reorganized Earth's military into a single, unified force. The Terran Defense Force. Old nations kept their flags and their governments, but they all answered to a single command structure now. The invasion had taught them a lesson they would never forget. Divided, they were weak. United, they were unstoppable. She visited the memorial built for Captain Yuna Kim and the other pilots who had died in the final battle. Their names were carved in stone, along with Yuna's final words. "I flew higher than she ever dreamed." "We will remember you," Sujin said quietly. "We will carry your names to the stars." 3 months after the invasion ended, a single alien ship approached Earth. It was small and unarmed, broadcasting a message of peace on all frequencies. Inside was Ambassador Thalas, the only council member who had warned against the attack. She landed at the Terran Defense Force headquarters and walked unarmed into a room full of humans who had every reason to hate her kind. Admiral Park was waiting. "You have courage," he said. "Coming here alone, after everything that happened." Thalas bowed her head. "I warned them. I told them what you were. They called me a fool." She looked up at him with her glowing blue eyes. "I came to apologize. Not for myself. I did everything I could, but for my people, for the council, for the arrogance that cost so many lives." Teho studied her for a long moment. "Why did you warn them? You did not know us. You had never met a human." "I listened to your transmissions," she said. "Your music, your stories, your history. I learned your languages and watched your wars and saw something that frightened me. You are a species that refuses to die. You face extinction again and again, and you always survive. I knew that attacking you would be a mistake, but no one wanted to hear it." Teho nodded. "You were right about us, but you were not right enough." In the Galactic Council chamber, High Chancellor Vexus addressed the gathered representatives. The mood was grim. The Draelan Empire was humiliated. 3 other species had lost significant portions of their fleets. And Earth, the primitive backwater that was supposed to be an easy conquest, had become something else entirely. "I declare Earth a level Omega restricted zone," Vexus announced. "No species may approach within 50 light-years without explicit human permission. Any vessel that violates this zone will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." The representatives murmured among themselves. A restricted zone. For a species that had not even reached the stars 6 months ago, it was unheard of. "We awakened something," Vexus continued, his voice heavy with fear. "We thought we were superior. We thought we were the rulers of this galaxy. We were wrong. Now we must pray that what we awakened does not come for us." Observer Luma presented her final report to the Council. She had been sent to document the extinction of a primitive species. Instead, she had documented something far more significant. "They call themselves human," she said. "They are small and fragile and short-lived. They fight among themselves and destroy their own environment and make mistakes that wiser species would avoid. They should have been easy prey." She paused, looking at the faces of the council members. "But they have something we do not understand. When faced with extinction, they do not surrender. They do not break. They adapt and evolve and grow stronger. Every weapon we used against them, they learned to copy. Every tactic we employed, they countered. And now they have our technology. They have our star maps. They have our fear." Vexus leaned forward. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that what happens next is not up to us anymore. The humans are building ships. They are training soldiers. They are preparing to leave their world and enter the galaxy." Luma took a deep breath. "We made them what they are. Now we must live with the consequences." On Earth, the first faster-than-light ship neared completion. It was built from human engineering and alien technology. A fusion of 2 worlds that had been at war. They named it the TDS Yuna Kim, in honor of the pilot who had given her life to save her world. Admiral Teho Park stood on the bridge as the final systems came online. The crew around him was young and eager. The first generation of humans who would travel beyond their own solar system. They had grown up during the invasion. They had lost family and friends, but they had also learned something important. They were not alone in the universe, and they would never be prey again. General Sujin Han joined him on the bridge. "Where do we go first?" she asked. Taeho smiled. "To the Galactic Council. We are going to take our seat at the table, whether they offer it or not." The ship launched from orbit, its engines burning bright against the darkness of space. It passed the wreckage of the invasion fleet, the debris of ships that had come to conquer and found only death. It passed the moon where humans had taken their first steps beyond Earth. And then it activated its faster-than-light drive and vanished into the stars. Ambassador Thalas watched the ship disappear from her own vessel, still in orbit around Earth. She had stayed to serve as a liaison between humanity and the Council, a bridge between two worlds that had nearly destroyed each other. "Where are they going?" her aide asked. "To change everything," Thalas replied. "They were attacked. They were nearly destroyed. And instead of hiding, instead of retreating, they are going out to face the galaxy. I do not know if they come as friends or enemies. I do not know if they want peace or revenge. But I know one thing." She turned to face her aide, and there was wonder in her eyes. "They will never be ignored again." 5 years later, Admiral Taeho Park sat in the Galactic Council chamber, in a seat that had been created specifically for humanity. The representatives who had once laughed at Earth now treated him with careful respect. The species that had tried to enslave his people now asked for trade agreements and defensive alliances. He thought about everything it had cost to reach this moment. 2 billion dead, cities destroyed, a world forever changed. He thought about Captain Yuna Kim and all the others who had given their lives so that humanity could survive. And he thought about the future, a future where humans traveled the stars as equals, a future where the galaxy knew that Earth was not a world to be conquered, but a world to be respected. A future built on the ashes of war and the hope of peace. He looked at the representatives around him, former enemies and potential allies, and he spoke the words that humanity had earned the right to say. "We are here, we are not leaving, and we are just getting started."